The information shared on this podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. While we discuss topics related to mental health, well-being, and emotional support, we are not providing therapy or medical services. Always seek the advice of your physician, psychologist, psychiatrist, or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a mental health condition. If you are in crisis, feeling unsafe, or need immediate support, please contact a mental health professional or emergency services in your area. The views expressed by guests and hosts are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of any affiliated organizations or institutions.
Get inspired, get motivated with M.A.Y.A and the M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition podcast.
Something that I take pride in is trying to be forward thinking, thinking outside the box, challenging myself. And as I challenge myself, hopefully I challenge you.
Find M.A.Y.A on Twitter and Instagram at M.A.Y.A_Akai. On Facebook at M.A.Y.A Akai Presents.
We're going to talk health, wealth, fitness, mental health, financial, lots of different things that can empower you as you seek out the ambition that you're pursuing.
Or get everything M.A.Y.A at M.A.Y.A_Akai.com.
To the 81 episode of M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. And I'm excited because every guest leading up to this has been absolutely amazing, and it doesn't get any less surprising and beneficial and amazing today. So, of course, as you know, my podcast, I like to embrace mental wellness as a salient topic so we can stop being like so worried about what people think about how we're doing with our mental health, because it's no different than having diabetes, high cholesterol, or anything else. So, with mental health, we're always working on it. So here we pull back that veil of self-doubt and self-sabotage that plagues so many of us in our everyday life. And I want to help you to identify the ambition, to harness the motivation, to help you to yield satisfaction and success in your everyday life, not just life. So if you are a first-time listener or viewer, welcome. I always say just buckle up for safety, because there's a possibility that something is going to be said here that's going to make you go, So, I have a thing for all my people in my age demographic. I like to say things that make you go, and you will only know that if you're my age, and you'll know CNC Music Factory. But occasionally you'll get that aha moment. Now, of course, if you are a returning listener or viewer, then you know how we do things here. You carve out the time to be here. I say grab a piece of paper, a pen. You might jot down something that you'll say, I need to go back and revisit this, because something that was said that was powerful, and I definitely want to think more about this, but I want to stay tuned into the episode. If you've missed any of the other episodes, don't worry. You can always find them on iTunes, Apple Podcast, iHeartRadio, Amazon Audibles. Pretty much, if it's a podcast platform, you can find me there. Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition. The easy way would be just to subscribe to my YouTube page. M.A.Y.A Speaks to You, and you can always share, subscribe, like, and you'll be notified when new episodes are coming up. And of course, I've gotten with it finally. So all of my social medias have the same handle, M.A.Y.A Speaks to You. So you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, or X. Of course, make sure that you subscribe and share my webpage, because there's two things there I really, really am super proud about. One, I do a weekly inspirational blog, just one blog a week on Wednesdays, something to give you to chew on, to think about as you're working on getting to that best version of yourself. And the other piece of my website that I really take personal, everyone who knows me, I am the poster child for being in a phase of menopause. So I created a menopause blog because there's a lot about menopause right now. It's such a trendy topic. Everybody's talking about it. And I still feel a lot of women still don't understand it. My blog seeks to help you understand it. It's called Me on Pause. So on Wednesdays, I post something new every week, and you can go and learn and grow through your menopause journey. That's M.A.Y.A Speaks to You as well, is how you can find it. So before we jump into our next guest, I have to recap what we did on Saturday. Another amazing guest. We had on Simone Canego, who is a best-selling author. She's also a TEDx speaker. And she is, more importantly, I love this about her, she podcasts with her daughter, who is 22 years old, Olivia. They kind of do a generational podcast where they share stories. The thing about her that makes her so powerful is she's a mother, a wife, a daughter, but she also climbed. Mount Kilimanjaro. That's not an easy feat, so to speak. But that journey was something that really changed her life. That when she wrote her first book, but now she's on her second book that will be released actually in February. So if you want to go on the order list, you can now. It's Real Confidence, a simple guide to go from unsure to unshakable. So if you order now, it comes with a lot of perks to kind of lead you up to the launch of the book in February. Fantastic guests. So make sure if you happen to have missed that episode, those are ways that you can go back and you can check in with all the guests that I've had. So Simone, also you can find her on her website, simonecanego.com, and then you can find everything about her. Something else I've been doing to help you out is I've been creating QR codes. So in the upper corner of the screen, you'll see a QR code. If you scan that at any point, when it reappears on the podcast, it will take you directly to Simone's website, and you can find her books and all the different things and projects that she's working on. But without further ado, we got to get ready to jump into our next guest on the ambition stage, psychiatrist Dr. Hector Rodriguez. And he's going to discuss with us the holistic healing side of mental health. I know holistic and mental health are two words that often seem very foreign to people, but there is a place, because Dr. Hector is going to talk to you about functional psychiatry, emotional wellness, and lifestyle medicine. And I believe once you sit through this episode, if you're struggling with your mental health or have a condition or know someone, some things are going to be said here that are going to make you think maybe once or twice about the treatment you might be receiving. And what do I always tell you here on the podcast? It's okay to ask questions if you are not sure about what you're going through, or if you don't know about a medication or something. Don't be shy. It is your mental health. So without further ado, here he is, Dr. Hector Rodriguez. Welcome to the M.A.Y.A podcast. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Of course. I have really been looking forward to this episode. And I'm not just saying that. I don't just say that to everyone, Dr. Hector. I swear I don't. Because this is something that's really passionate to me about the holistic side of psychiatry. Because if you know, that's two words that most people would never put into the same kind of sentence, because everything about psychiatry is thought to be, medication. You know what I mean? So you say holistic, right, and people go, I just never saw it that way. So I can't wait to talk about that. But before we jump into that, you have a unique journey. You went from being a photographer to a psychiatrist. And most people will say, well, that creativity, how does that flow into being a psychiatrist? Tell us more about your journey.
Well, I mean, to me now in hindsight, it all makes like perfect sense. When I was a fashion photographer, I would spend a lot of time getting to know the person that I was going to photograph that day. Usually during hair and makeup, that's when I would sit down and get to know them. Without knowing at that time, I was in my early 20s. I didn't think that was going to lead to even how I do psychiatry today. But in that process, I also did my master's in theology. And that to me kind of ties in, puts the final bow on what I do today. And when I look at the word psychiatry, and that's the thing too. I mean, when you say that people don't see holistic with the word psychiatrist, because the perception or the understanding of what a psychiatrist does today is very different than I think how it even began. So I look at the word psychiatry, and the word psychiatry comes from the Greek for psyche, and the rest of it is basically the medical treatment of. So psyche means the soul. So when I look at the meaning of the word psychiatry, I'm like, well, this is it, right? And we think that psychiatrists are just giving out a medication. I think our healthcare system has driven us and has molded us into being that kind of doctor, but we're missing the big picture, which is taking care of the soul.
Thank you for that. Sorry. See, this is the impromptu thing when you do things from your house. My cat was trying to break into the room, and so I had to take care of that real quick. It was only going to get progressively worse.
Well, they wanted to listen in.
I mean, she's like banging on the door, and I'm like, okay, this is the first guest we've elicited that response. Okay, yes, and even the nature of that. And you're right. So you go from theology. See, even that. See, now again, someone's going to say, wait a minute. So photographer, theology, and you wanted to go into psychiatry? Because again, people don't see psychiatry from that standpoint. I think it's kind of that old school mentality, the old, the one flew over the cuckoo's nest mentality about what psychiatry really is.
Right. And when we start explaining that, and that's, we tend to see psychiatrists through the lens of movies, the lens of TV, that you get put in a straitjacket and you're gonna get locked away, and that evil psychiatrist is scheming to control your brain. We don't do that. We don't have time to scheme. So it's like, if anything, I'll tell patients, like, if anything, my plan is to change how we're doing psychiatry. So if you're thinking of me as this, like, what is this? What am I scheming? What I'm scheming and what I'm trying to change is how we view psychiatry, and we have to educate. It starts with creating awareness, educating, where I think mental health should be leading, in that direction. So that's my goal, to change that.
And hence comes the idea of obviously it being holistic. So there are some
Hmm.
dimensions to what you do that I feel like obviously encompass when you say holistic, when you talk about functional psychiatry, emotional wellness, and then lifestyle medicine. So talk about those dimensions as they exist within your practice.
Well, I mean, we see the white butterfly as a whole wellness approach, whole person, right? So when I look at the whole person, then I start paying attention to their biology. I start paying attention to what is going on in their psyche, right? What were the stressors that this person has experienced? So when I look at the whole person, it's a lot more complex than, here, take a pill. I wish it was that easy. I wish I can just literally give you a pill and
Mhm,
everything, all the trauma, all the stressors just goes away. No, we got to look at the entire thing. And when I look at someone's life and I try to change their lifestyle, that's one of the major things that I use to get them to a place of healing. Right? So I got to look at your diet. I got to look at your movements. What are you doing in these areas? So that goes towards healing, because your brain is also hurt. And if your brain is hurt, what do you think is going to happen? It's going to produce all these crazy symptoms that we all experience, that we're like, wait, what the heck is going on here? Why am I losing my hair? Why do I have a random rash every time I face this stressor when I go to work? I'm like, well,
mhm,
this is your body communicating to us. It's letting us know that there's something here going on, that you don't like it. And maybe your thoughts are not going there, but your body is definitely communicating. So then I got to pay attention to that. So that's that whole person. We use the word holistic, but I almost see it as, sometimes people think that if you're a holistic psychiatrist, you only do this. I'm like,
mhm.
no,
Right.
it's whole. I have my training using pharmacology, and I can't just throw that aside, right?
Right.
There's science and many years of research backing up that science, but I can't just do that only either. I got to do the whole thing. So that's why lifestyle psychiatry comes into play, where I'm like, okay, let's stop, time out, pause. What are you eating? What are you putting in your body? What messages are you receiving, through the social media, that you're watching? All of that, we talk about, we pay attention to it, and then little by little we have to modify it, because that's where we get to heal.
And you're right, whole holistic, and you're right. People kind of can take those words and not pull them apart and look at the way that they should. You said something that a lot
Hmm.
of people, like one, just working with people from being a therapist can always be its challenge, because anytime you ask someone about a lifestyle change, it feels like twisting their arm, because like when you talk to people about mindfulness, instantly they think that means, oh, meditation. I'm like, not always,
Hmm.
but
Not
it
always.
can it can include that.
Right.
But the idea of mindfulness is being aware of things and creating discipline and consistency that can allow you to heal. So talk to a bit about when you kind of you talked about like like your diet. If I was to say the word diet to people within therapy, they're like,
Hmm.
why are we talking about diet? It's like,
Right.
well,
Right.
you do know gut health is directly connected to mental health, and a lot of
Hmm.
people don't get like, how is that even possible? Can you kind of speak to that? How is gut health connected to mental health?
Well, let's start with something simple, and is, I pay attention to the inner bully. Our inner bully is basically this little voice always telling me I'm stupid, I'm dumb, I'm blah blah blah, blah, right? Well, the inner bully is part of the system called the singular gyres, where we get stuck on a thought pattern, whatever it is. It's just that the one in the back, the posterior singular gyres, we get stuck on things about ourselves.
Hmm.
So that's that inner bully, right? So if I get stuck with the idea that I'm stupid, it doesn't. It's hard for me to just think of something else. Snap out of it. When people tell us that, hey, stop thinking, think about something else. No, the brain can't. This person's brain can't. Well, that responds very well to carbohydrates. So then I got to see, well, what's your carbohydrate intake? What kinds of carbohydrates are you consuming? because we got to crank up your serotonin in a different way. So if I'm using medications and supplements, now I got to look at how are you getting serotonin to your gut, where serotonin, most of the serotonin is made. So if your gut flora, which is basically bacteria in your gut that is, by the way, supposed to be there, just like there's some parasites that are supposed to be there. I'm just saying that there's a trend now with everyone getting parasitic cleanses. Careful, because you might be killing good parasites and good bacteria. So that's on another topic probably. But because it's connected. So if your flora is giving, or you're giving it the wrong type of sugar, the wrong type of carbohydrate, it's not going to pump up the serotonin that your brain needs to quiet that bully. It won't. I mean, you can take all the antidepressants that increase serotonin in the world, and that if you don't change that, it won't connect. It won't do it, right? I used to be a chem major, so it's like this is a chemical reaction, right? I have the precursor and I have the final product. I can't get to the precursor. I can't get from the precursor to the final product if there's no precursor. There's no thing to turn into, right? And then I go and I try to teach them like, well, that thing turns into this other thing with vitamins. So those vitamins, those B vitamins are for your brain, right? B vitamins for your brain. B6, B12, B9, folate, all those are B vitamins. Are you consuming B vitamins? And I recommend in your diet, especially anything that is green. Eat a lot of green. There's so much B vitamins in those. And then let's pay attention to how and what time of your day are you consuming those. And I think today, everyone is like, well, maybe for a long time, we don't like vegetables. Vegetables is like, I don't like vegetables. We are lacking in so many vitamins that a lot of these reactions and all this stuff that I was just talking about is not going to happen. It just won't if you're deficient in these. So that's that lifestyle change. And yeah, all this stuff takes time.
Oh, absolutely. Well, absolutely. And there you have it. And so you just probably gave one of the best examples about when we talk about the gut and mental health connection. Because if you would have quizzed people and asked, and I'll be honest, I did not even recently know that about there being like how serotonin is produced, like in this. I didn't know any of that until recently, until I started kind of attending some of these different functional medicine things that were geared towards mental health. And I was like, well, look at that. That's the bigger connection. So even what you just described, it would even sound like, hence, this is why people should reach out to you and talk to you if they're struggling, because this is not going to be a one size fits all, because it sounds like you would have to look at where deficiency actually sits for people to probably tailor that diet for them.
Right. And also, mapping of, what is your brain doing? Because maybe you don't need all the serotonin that, Rob might need. It's just different demands, right? So if your brain doesn't need it, but Rob does, and I'm using Rob as an example, right? Rob does, well, he needs to load up on serotonin, but maybe he needs more dopamine than you. And I got to see how your body is producing dopamine. So it's like all these things that we're trying to get to. Well, it's part of what you're feeding yourself, right? And this is just nutrition, and these are just a few things that I try to tell my patients to learn, but there's a lot more than that. But you got to trust your clinician. You got to trust that the clinician knows this knowledge. And those clinicians out there that don't, dude, go learn it. That's what I tell a lot of my colleagues. Listen, go learn it.
Go learn it.
You're a lot smarter than, you already went through medical school, but this is an ongoing learning process for us as clinicians. So if you don't know it, go learn it. Because the beautiful thing of what's happening today with, social media is creating awareness within the general population of like, wait, a lot of us are struggling with the same thing. So the medical community has to start stepping up, has to be learning to modify the way we've been doing things. So we got to learn it.
And that's collaboration is one of the things that we so push for, but it just sometimes can be a difficult connection to make with people about if we work collectively together, imagine what we could achieve with the clients that we work with, because each of us definitely have something different that we bring to the table. But something that when I first met and talked to you that really just jumped out at me is when we talked about the idea of we are within the one profession that people often do not directly, not everyone, because this is a shift and it's changing, does not look at the organ we treat, which is the brain. And we talked a bit about, and it, the more we talked about the gut health thing, it even made me say to myself, and like, it's almost instant that you go see someone and they'll determine what your diagnosis, what they think it is. Okay, so let's just say it's depression. Chances are they're going to maybe pick out a medication they think that's going to be best for you based on probably more of what has been used and worked. But it might be an SSRI, or
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's the one go to when you talk about
Mm-hmm.
antidepressants. It feels like most people prescribe SSRIs.
Right.
Occasionally there'll be MIL. But now, in saying that, does it make sense to prescribe someone something if they really aren't that deficient in it? Like, how
Well,
would a
that
person know that somebody is serotonin deficient to be able to say
right.
this is probably the best medication for you?
Well, that's where I turn to what are the tools that we have today. And for me, SPEC scans has been a huge change in how I do psychiatry. So it gives me a little bit of a roadmap of what part of your brain is overworked and needs more of that serotonin support, right? So
Hmm.
we got to start with that. We got to start in the way that we're diagnosing people. I think the way we do psychiatry and assessing needs to radically change. We need to use other modalities to do that and combine them all so you can get to a better thing. But one of the things that I noticed in a lot of my colleagues, and I don't want to speak, on their behalf, but um, the main thing I get is I don't have enough time. How do you do it? I don't have enough time, right? And our mental, this is a much bigger talk. I think our mental health or our healthcare system in general needs to change. It needs to change in the way that the doctors can be doctors.
Hmm.
And I say that because they spend a lot of the time just documenting and they're just drowning in paperwork. And none of us went into this field to be filling out forms all the time.
Hmm.
Like, I've never forget this one patient where I probably spent like 40, 45 minutes trying to convince their insurance to pay for a treatment. I could spend those 45 minutes with my patient. So when we think of someone going to see a doctor and expect something change in one visit,
Right.
this is a brain.
Hmm.
We are a lot more complex in one time. But
Yes.
our healthcare system has pushed us to be this way. And let's not forget either, that other person also just wants a pill. They want that one visit to get the full diagnostic picture of this extremely complex organ in 30 minutes and spit out something at the end, and usually it's a prescription. So that process needs to change because it's, till this day, I'm like, I have a suspicion that this is going on. And I tell my patient, I'm like, this is where I'm heading. But more likely than not, it might change because you change every single minute of the day.
Hmm.
And as a clinician, I can't make the assumption that this plan is going to be it. Right? So you mentioned SSRIs. SSRIs, the reason why we go to them all the time is because they have the most studies to cover most of the symptoms. But that we all know that's not the same for everyone. But if the
Hmm.
brain, if we're not looking at the brain activity, how is that clinician going to know? Well, they've been trained to use that group of medication first because it tends to cover 80% of the symptoms and in a relatively good amount of time without risks, right? We talk about side effects and all that wonderful stuff. But I think the bigger conversation is we got to change how we're doing, how our healthcare system is operating.
How would you say, when you come across, and I have worked with people who will say, I am medication resistant. I have been
Mm-hmm.
on, matter of fact, people will tell me the list of things they've been on, along with the list of things they've been diagnosed with. And they'll say, and none of these things work for me. And I mean, to me, that can be, very perplexing. I've known people who have even gone as far to say they've used an ECT,
Mm-hmm.
and it did not work.
Work, right?
Esketamine, just what are often those types of modalities that insurance has to even approve. You have to
Right.
show that you've done the diligence to try the other things
Mm-hmm.
first.
Mm-hmm.
But kind of, what's your approach if someone like walks into your office? They're like, Dr. Hector, I'm frustrated at this point. I have been on all kinds of medication. My depression has not broken. Matter of fact, I feel like it's getting worse. I just feel like nothing is going to help me. How do you proceed with working with that person?
We need to assess the person correctly because chances are it's not that, right? If you have a broken arm and you're bleeding, oh, okay, most likely it came from that broken arm. But if you don't find blood, it's not the broken arm. It's something else. So the same thing if someone comes with depression, I'm like, and you've taken all these and done this and done this and not, okay, it's something else. It's not depression. So your assessment, your diagnostic process was probably done incorrectly. Most of the time for that type of patient is a hormone problem. So I got to check hormones. So
Okay.
when that patient comes to me, I'm like, most likely it's not that. So we got to look at the entire thing. That's what that whole wellness, whole person approach that I try to do. But I tell them, like, we have to find out what's happening, what really is happening, and a lot of the times it's also trauma
Mm.
that is being manifested as a mood disorder or is being manifested as a anxiety disorder because they've been given the medications for it. They're supposed to heal with that, and they're not. Then most likely that's not it. Another component could be how your body metabolizes medications.
Mm-hmm.
Not every medication is for everyone. We have our own genes, we metabolize medications at different rates, and some we don't metabolize at all. So I got to order that too. So these are things that are not instant, are definitely not in a first time visit. So I tell my patients, you got to give me time because I got to figure out this puzzle.
That makes sense though. But if someone is coming to you with
Mm-hmm.
with the complaints and the distress of I've tried everything and it's not working, well then we cannot keep repeating the same
Repeating
process.
the same thing. Yeah, I'm not going to
Assume,
re-prescribe the same medications that are not working.
right, and assume
I
that
got
we're
to be
gonna.
like, okay, we got to sit down and reassess this. So I spend
Hmm.
a lot more time with my patient to get to that root cause. Now, most of the time, we finish that first encounter, I didn't get to the root cause. I
Hmm.
send you to get more data, get lab works done, get a spec scan, bring me all your imaging that you've done, bring me all the studies that you've done. What have they done? And then when you sit down and look at it, I'm like, wait, there's no hormone panels, there's no inflammatory markers because maybe you went to that provider with inflammatory responses, but what you said was not gearing them to think that.
Hmm.
But you are not a clinician, so that history taking is important. But at the end of the day, if it's missing, then it's not that.
So let me ask you this: in the amount of people that you have seen, how many people have really truly sat in front of you and walked in with this wonderful box of stuff and said, "Okay, Dr. Hector, here is my spec scan. Here are my labs from last year. Here's my list of medications." Like they can really lay things out like they have really come across. And again, this is not a scathing indictment of all clinicians because, like you said,
No.
it's time. And time is pushing how healthcare is moving, so to speak. But have you ever really come across a person you could say that you felt like the providers really poured that much into it to kind of get to the root cause of what was going on with them?
I would probably say that a big chunk of my patients are, because I meet with those providers and then that's what they tell me. And they're
Gotcha.
like, yeah, no, I can't think of anything else. I'm like, we've done this, we've done that. She hasn't responded. We've looked in this, we looked under this rock. There was nothing there. I'm like, yeah, but we're missing something else. And in those kind of patients, I sit with the other provider. So I,
Ah,
I consult other psychiatrists, or I
okay.
become a consultant psychiatrist in a lot of those cases, especially my international cases or cases where I'm not, I only see patients in Florida and in California where I'm licensed.
Hmm.
But anywhere outside of that, I become a consultant psychiatrist. So I work alongside their psychiatry team. So usually those patients, when they come, those psychiatrists and those other doctors have done their due diligence, but it's also how they were trained to do their due diligence. That's where
Hmm.
my creativity comes in. Remember, we sometimes in medicine see creativity as a big no-no, like
Right.
get slapped in the face, like you're not supposed to be creative. We got to show science. Yeah, but I got to look into other science areas
Yes.
to
Yes.
to apply it over here because it just hasn't happened.
Hence, see,
So tapping into my creativity is key.
that makes sense. Hence, you look at your background in photography and theology, and now, if anyone's been listening closely, they can see how all these things have flowed in to shape the kind of psychiatrist that you have become. That wants to look at the entirety of the person to see the root cause. Tell me, how many times have you seen this? Because I know I have seen this only from the therapist standpoint. A person will come in the door, they're struggling with anxiety, depression, but they were referred in from a medical provider. And they're insisting at that point, after maybe doing a few labs, and say, I think it's in your head. You need to go talk to someone. Even though, because, a lot of, psychiatric symptoms can very much
Mm-hmm.
look very medical based as well.
Mm-hmm.
They can
Mm-hmm.
share some similarities and things. And a lot of times, especially when I worked in the ER, um, in that capacity, they would instantly just say, I'm going to send you over to the psych pod because I kind of feel like what you're saying is more psychiatric than medical.
I tell them, yes, it is in your head. It's called your brain.
I like that.
It is. The computer is malfunctioning. So you might get a rash all over your body. You're like, wait, what the heck? There's no, and I don't like to use the word medical reason to prove it. Of course, it's just that that person didn't know how to prove it, that it came from your brain. That's all. So when all my patients are coming in, and in psychiatry, we use the word somatic symptoms, right? Somatic
Hmm.
meaning physical symptoms are manifesting because of your brain, because of with your depression, anxiety, whatever. But it's not made up. I think that's the part where it gets disconnected, is because people think that if this is happening, then people might believe that I'm making it up, that I'm making up all these symptoms. Well, you can't make up a rash,
No.
and you can't make up your hair falling. You can't make up that you're not sleeping, you're having restless legs. You can't make that up, right?
Hmm.
So when someone says it's in your head, I'm going to say, yeah, it is. It is. They are 100% right. It is in your head, and it's your brain, and no one really knows how to see what it's doing and not doing, because they just don't know. That's okay. Let's find out what's going on with your brain,
There
because
you
that's
go.
all coming from your brain.
There you go.
So
They've
that's
come to the
literally
right place.
literally what I tell them.
I love it though. But
I'm
you've
like, it
come to the
is in
right.
your head.
But the thing is, they've come to the right place with someone who's willing to listen and be open and let them be seen and
Hmm.
heard and not make them so feel crazy. Because people will be like,
Right.
I've been through all these things and literally they were making me feel like I was crazy.
Crazy. Yeah.
And it's like, no, it's and I love, and that's the thing I like so much when people want to look at more things from the entirety of something versus
Hmm.
just a symptom means this is why I'm like really a fan of holistic doctors, because I like the
Hmm.
fact that they want to find the root of the problem and not
Yeah.
just treat the symptom. That's the thing
Right.
that's so appealing to that side of medicine, which a lot of people think, oh, that's like a lot of interesting hocus pocus. I'm like, actually no, there's science behind it, just like
Hmm.
there's science behind the doctor that you go see. No one is doing anything magically behind closed doors. you
Yeah.
know
No. No. No.
um
No.
so great. I'm glad because one of the things I know people would ask is that, okay, if you're in Florida and California, it means, oh, well, I'm sitting here in Illinois, which means, well, how is that going to help me? Because I can't, obviously, I can't just relocate to those states to see you. So when
Right.
you kind of step into that role of being a consulting psychiatrist, what does that look like? Should they reach out to you themselves, or kind of what does that kind of referral piece look like?
Yeah. Most of the time they reach out to me themselves,
Okay.
and then I have to tell them, listen, we got to get your team on board.
Okay.
And if that individual, that therapist, that psychiatrist, that doctor does not want to collaborate, but this is something you want to do, we got to find another one,
Gotcha.
right? We have to, because we got to work as a team. We got to work as a collaboration. I have no problem, and I've done it many times, where the psychiatrist calls me and they just want to consult,
Hmm.
right? And I consult. That's no problem. But the most common scenario that occurs is the patient calls us and like, hey, I don't think what's being done is working, and I need a different set of eyes. And that's our first thing. I'm like, well, where are you living? The doctor's not licensed in those states, so your team has to be willing to collaborate with us. Most of the time, it works fine. It's
Good.
just if we have a provider that's like, absolutely not, I am not going to talk to anybody else, and you're like, okay, well, that's your answer. We got to work with
Right.
someone else, because in medicine we were taught to collaborate. I don't know what
Hmm.
happened the minute we graduated. That went out the window. I'm like, no, you gotta work together. Clearly, and there's nothing against, because the main thing that happens is that the psychiatrist or the doctor feels personally attacked, like I'm not good enough. Immediately that goes there.
Hmm.
But since I'm a trauma therapist, trauma expert, not therapist, I'm like,
Of course.
that person is struggling with their own thing.
Of
I'm like, we got
course.
to talk about that psychiatrist's inner bully. I'm like, who's telling you that you're not good?
But I'm
you know?
so happy, like that term, like the inner bully. I think that is something that people could probably truly relate to,
Hmm.
because when you have those internal conversations in your own mind, you don't see it as, I'm bullying myself, this is
Right,
ridiculous, it makes no
right.
sense. Whereas we can totally understand the idea of bullying from the outside,
That's
just
right.
not bullying from the inside.
Hmm. And we all have a bully. Listen, we all have a bully. It's all there. It's always there. Is when, how is it that some people listen to it and some people don't? That's always what I try to go towards. Can we let that singular gyrus rest and not get so fixated on us, right? And
Mhm.
especially the negative view of us. And
Mm-hmm.
that's where I got to work hand in hand with their therapist. I'm like, who's your therapist? You know, are we working on the same page here? You know,
Yes.
are they on board with collaborating? This morning I had one of my collaboration calls with a therapist. She lives in Tampa, and the patient lives in Tampa, in Florida, and I'm here in Miami, and she's a great therapist. But when I showed her the SPECT scans of the patient, she was like, "Oh," and I've already worked with her in the past, and she knows SPECT scans. She's like, "Oh, okay, I need to change gears. I totally see what you're talking about now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, now you know." And she does really good trauma work. She was doing EMDR with my patient, and she's responding positively. But now they hit a wall. They're kind of stuck. So I told her, like, let's meet so I can show you the patient scans, and let's put together a new treatment plan. Let's reevaluate what we're doing. That's all. So when I collaborate with another doctor too, I'm like, let's just reevaluate. You
Mm-hmm.
know, let's put all the cards out on the table and see what are we missing. And many times, even I always like, God, what am I missing? What am I not seeing that you are clearly seeing?
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting when you talk about that collaboration piece. Those are some of, I feel like, the patients that are doing the best is when I have that ability to collaborate with, whether it's their nurse
Yeah.
practitioner that's prescribing, whether it's a psychiatrist. In Illinois, psychologists can be prescribers too if they go that extra step. Um, I feel like those are the best relationships because when something's not working, I can say, well, let's go back and talk to so and so about this.
Hmm.
Whereas I've worked with other people, for instance, where their prescriber is outside and I can't get them to call me back. They will not respond, but yet they made a medication change and
Hmm.
my client is telling me all these other things. So I think the one piece that I often say to people is if you can find a prescriber and a therapist that are willing to collaborate together, that is going to be the best thing for your treatment overall, because now
Hmm.
you have a team of people, as you said, that are working together in your best interest to get you to where
Right.
we're trying to get you to be. So
Right.
that is something that I wish more people would just embrace openly.
Yeah. And from experience, and the more I do it, it's an ego thing, right? The clinician has to put the ego. You got to leave the ego at the door. You know, like if that, and I also tell them too, like if that was your sister or your brother or your mom, or
Mhm.
wouldn't you do anything that
Mhm.
includes moving out of the way? Meaning you move your ego out of the way, and let's work with these other people. We're all smart. None of us went into mental health because we're stupid. None of us, because this is a very hard profession.
Mhm.
Okay, so none of us are stupid, and we all have a different way of looking at it. And I recently saw Wicked Part Two. I'm not
Ah,
promoting the movie, but I freaking love Wicked because there's so much mental health in that movie in both.
yes.
And
Yes.
this message of like I'm just looking
Yes.
at it in a different way. She says it many times in the movie, and I'm like, yes, like you just need to have the ability to look at it from a different way. And sometimes if you can't, meet with that other provider that is looking at it from a different perspective. So you can really paint the full
Yes.
picture.
And that's the thing. I think people don't realize that when I sit down with with the prescribers of my clients, we go through what's happening. We talk about what I'm seeing, what they're hearing. We work through all these things and we bounce ideas.
Hmm.
And exactly what you said, to all of those people I work with, I feel they are some of the most humble and exceptionally good at their job, though. But I also feel they have that empathy and that kindness and that warmth that you really want in a
Hmm.
provider. All right,
Hmm.
so we've got people, let's say, who see this and they go, okay, I definitely I want this collaboration piece. So I would instruct them to reach out to you first. I think that conversation with you first probably makes a lot more sense because you never know how their prescriber is gonna think on this. But
Yeah.
what about the spec scan? Because I know that's the one thing some people would probably say, well, will I even have access? Because I guarantee you, most people will be like, I would love to see what's happening inside my brain. One person said to me, my brain feels like it's on fire. Like
Hmm.
it just never shuts down. I just can't. They're struggling right now, big time. And the medication
Hmm.
piece we have struggled with. FYI,
Hmm.
something coming your way. But anyways, but I mean, if a person, I mean, are spec scans readily available, that kind of thing. I mean, I know in Illinois, they're actually, I did find one location in the area. It's Dr. Amen's clinic in Bannockburn. I
Yeah.
do believe it's up north. So in Illinois, okay, we have something. But let's say someone doesn't. Do you feel like that's something like we could still work without it, but it's a tool to have if we can?
Yeah. So when I have patients that really just can't, right? They can't get to one of the clinics to get the spec scan. I've done this already for so long that I'm like, I can draw your spec scan. But if we want to do something else, there's also QEEG that could be
Okay.
done. And
Yes.
QEEGs are really readily available pretty much
Yes.
anywhere,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm like, let's look at the QEEG because that's electrical activity. A SPECT
Mm-hmm.
scan is blood flow, but they give us the same information. So then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, if they give us the same information and your clinician knows how to use that to change your treatment, great, right? So let's do it, right? So
Okay.
that's one of the things with using different tools. But a SPEC scan, I mean, I know them because of aiming clinics. We have a Florida office, but there's one in Atlanta, there's one in Illinois near Chicago. Um, they're pretty much in most states. Not in every state for
Not in
sure.
every state, right?
But I've had patients that are like, oh, I'm in California, but I'm going on a work trip to Dallas. I'm like, get scanned in Dallas.
There you
And
go.
he did. He got scanned in Dallas, sent me
Okay.
the scans. We reviewed them, went back home to California, and we're there, but there's still other things. It's just that your clinician has to have that knowledge of how to use them. It's not necessarily how to read them, but how to use them in clinical practice. So that's what I would probably say when it comes to, someone doesn't have access to a spec scan.
Okay. All right. But
Hmm.
again, it's not the only thing that can be used to kind of help kind of navigate the process. Everyone, just like my other guys, on the top of the screen, there is a QR code that is made just for Dr. Hector. So scan it and it takes you to his website. I try to make things easy for people here, Dr. Hector.
This is
Like just,
awesome.
we live in a world where it's like scan this, look at that.
Yeah,
I'm
look at
trying to
that.
make it
Yeah.
easy. So of course, you can scan the QR code. Of course, you can go to his website as well. It's pretty straightforward. www.drhector.com. That's easy. You probably can remember that. I always say too, get social with people. For everybody who's been coming on the show, I feel like following people opens that door to learning more. So Instagram
Hmm.
for you at Dr._Hector, Facebook at Hector Eduardo Rodriguez, and LinkedIn, if you're a LinkedIn person, at Dr. Hector. Pretty straightforward. You're easy to find. I
I think it's
encourage
pretty
people,
easy.
like, follow, get familiar. Because most people, if you think about it, in the past, when most people have found their providers, it was maybe like they just found it because it was an insurance. They didn't get a chance to really maybe learn more about the person they're going to be working with. Here it is, an opportunity to learn more about you, your journey, and what you do. I encourage people, if you want to change the trajectory of where you're going in your life or your mental health, then there has to be that due diligence to really find the people that are going to see and hear you. And I'll be honest, in healthcare, especially as of late, it doesn't always feel that easy to find someone that you can connect to. You seem very easily connectable now. I'm pretty sure you've heard this before.
Well, I value human connection. So to me, that's one of our pillars. Actually, it's also the theme of our magazine these 2 months of November and December, because we also have a magazine. It's also free and it's on
Okay.
our website.
Yeah, I
And
think I
that's the
saw that.
connection issue.
Yes, I think I saw because there was a blog on your website, and I think I
Yeah,
saw if you subscribe, there was something. So it's the magazine when
the
people
magazine,
subscribe.
and it's free. Yeah, it's free.
Okay. Okay. So there you go. Start with that. Subscribe to the to the website, the magazine, learn more about Dr. Hector, and step back. If you're a person who's not happy with your mental health care, then guess what? This could be that first step in a direction that could change what you're doing. Because I always say this, and I know you know this, mental health is not one size fits all. So when
Mm-mm.
people get super discouraged, I tell them, don't give up. I said, this isn't as simple as just take a pill or wave a magic wand. I said, because if it was, don't you think everybody would be healed at this point? And they're like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't think of it that way. I'm like, exactly. You're a unique individual, which means you require to be looked at through a microscope that is for you, not just for everyone. And it
Right.
sounds like that is what you do.
Yeah. I always use the analogy of a puzzle. I'm like, listen, we're all complex puzzles.
Okay.
And if your doctor is seeing a piece of the puzzle and not the rest, but guess what happens? We put a piece of the puzzle together. You know how sometimes when we're putting a puzzle, we put some areas, we're like, oh, these kind of go together.
Yes. Yes.
But every day you go back and reshuffle it. So
Mhm.
it's like you're working on a puzzle that is constantly reshuffling. So you're like, okay, we got to start, so this is a very complex thing, but we can do tangible everyday things to get to that finished puzzle, which is what I am always loving to get to.
And let's be honest, puzzles are not easy. you know, especially when you get to those, like, 500-piece puzzles. It's like that's work. And then, but people should begin to see themselves that way, because we are
Exactly.
intricate and unique that way. And as you're going through your life and you're learning things, guess what? Every time you learn something new about you, you're putting a piece into that puzzle and
Hmm.
completing your picture. So that's
Hmm.
definitely a good way to look at it. Any parting thoughts for my listeners before we go?
Very easy. Love your brain. This is the most important organ. Obviously, I think it's the most important organ of your body. But love it. There's no transplant. It's yours. This is it. So love on it. Take care of it. Feed it well. Exercise it well, and we're gonna be good.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Dr. Hector, for being here. We appreciate you sharing everything.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, everyone. So make sure you get social with Dr. Hector. Of course, go to the website. It's pretty straightforward, www.drhector.com. But make life easy for yourself and just scan the QR code at the top. And voila, all things Dr. Hector is right there for you. All right, everyone. So again, another amazing guest, and guess what? It just keeps getting better. We're steamrolling through November right into December, and so our next guest, as he was, remember, part of what we look to do here is I want to show you those people who took their passion and their purpose, and they were able to combine them together, and they're doing very altruistic things to help people. Another person on the Ambition stage is going to be Justin Artist, who is a speaker and musician, but he specializes in teaching leadership through music. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, people. He does so much more. So if you, again, are a creative and you feel your energy is not moving forward and you love music, he has created some amazing tools and processes that are helping people to take what they're passionate about to the next level. And by the way, he had a very unique journey himself that put him on the path to be able to help others. So he's going to be next on the stage, episode 82. So make sure you tune in when we have Justin Artist on the show as well. Of course, if you've missed any of the other shows, don't panic. Just go to Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all those places, and search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and you can find me there. Of course, you can listen to episodes via my website. Just go to maya-speaks.com and you can find episodes, or just subscribe to YouTube. Make your life easy and you will be notified when episodes are coming up. So whether you're like watching my show on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or X, the handle is always M.A.Y.A Speaks to You. And that's how you can connect with the show. Remember too, on the website, you got to check out my inspiration blog as well as the Me on Pause blog that is dedicated to menopause. And it's Podcast Central right there on the website. All right, everyone. So until next time, remember, your present becomes your past and your future is no more. So to all of my consistent listeners, those are the words of Pearl Jam, not me. But I love it because I want you to think about what being present really means. So everyone, be well, stay safe, but more important, just keep being amazing.
Whether you're on the go or listening on your cell phone, tablet, or laptop, you can find the show in the iTunes, Google, and iHeartRadio platforms.
With all due respect, I believe this is going to be our finest hour.
Just search M.A.Y.A, My Ambition, Your Ambition, and get ready to be inspired and motivated to harness your ambition.